Hello, and welcome to this week's show where we look at action and stunts on film and television. It's 40 years since First Blood made an appearance at the cinema, and Sylvester Stallone, of course, already a household name after his success in the Rocky pictures. This was something new for him, and a script which ultimately he hated originally because nobody else wanted to touch it with a barge pole. I think there was a whole bunch of other actors who'd been approached. I seem to remember a story that Kirk Douglas was also down to play the Troutman character, which ultimately was played by Richard Crenna. So it had gone through a number of guises, and action-wise, they had brought in Conrad Palmisano to oversee the whole thing. Stallone was very hands-on, and he'd lost a great deal of weight, and he was in great shape, but was very much the sort of person who wanted to do a great deal of the action himself. He was allowed to do some, and again, we draw the line between action and stunts. There is a chasm here in the 80s. Nowadays it's a very different kettle of fish, as I'm sure you can appreciate. But back then there was a fine line to be had between one and the other, and it was simply a case of Stallone wanting to do certain things in the picture, being told, well, it's not really something you need to do, plus the fact we've got a world champion here, we've got a great motorcyclist here, or we've got this guy here, and they're going to make you look much, much better. And on the strength of that, you go ahead with it. You know, I don't really see an issue with that. A couple of great moments along the way, and we're going to highlight those as we look at the clips like this. First Blood from 1982. This shower sequence was really the start of the whole thing. Sylvester Stallone describes this as not wanting to do any martial arts or anything of that nature. This is he explains that on the DVD commentary. But all of these hits here, these are actors. So these are all of the actors. They're not doubled. There is one moment of doubling which I'll point out to you. Well, not really doubling. It's just a casting of a stunt performer. But all of this eye gouging, look, all of that sort of stuff. Now, this is the actor, grabs him round the throat. He gets hold of him here, and this is Chris Mulcahy, who's the actor. Bang! Flipped over. Bang! Into the kidneys. Ooh! Take that. This is Al Humphreys. He's another actor. He's not a stunt performer. And gets flung through this window. Now, that takes a lot of balls, because you've really got to time this absolutely perfectly. Spot on. There'll be padding behind that, but nevertheless, that's shrapnel knocking about everywhere. That's very, very difficult. That is Brian Dennehy getting it. This is Paul Barber. Now, Paul Barber is a stunt performer. And I say this because he has no alternative. There's no punching here. He's pushed. But you're going out through a window. That's a toffee glass window or a sugar glass window. You have to go out in a certain way. You have to clear that. You have to then, you know, that the padding area is right below. You can't mess about with that, and I don't think you could risk it with an actor. Inside, the other one might be slightly different. But I mean, again, that's the actor there getting a kick to the chest. He puts a huge knife. Ooh, that guy gets one as well. Thank you very much. Huge knife in his belt there. And it is huge. It's, 13.5 inches, apparently, made specifically for the movie. That will disappear at some point during this chase, and you'll never see it again. Will Harper, who is about to take over and do all of the doubling, all of the important doubling anyway, as far as the motorcycle thing is concerned. Sly rides a bike, and this is him riding a bike. Very clearly it's him, but there's a whole heap of stuff that he doesn't do. Anything in long shot that you see, that's all Will Harper. In the car is stuntman Benny Dobbins. As he mentions on the commentary, if you listen to it, there was music score. Jerry Goldsmith had a music score here. That's all been taken off. All you can hear is this. Now, this is 100 foot he jumps here, because there's a takeoff ramp. And Benny Dobbins does the same thing. The car lands flat, breaks his back. That's an additional shot there. Further down the line, this car gets turned over. Little ramp. Hey, there we go. And of course, this truck is really travelling at a certain rate of knots, and it's got to get to the end here, and it's got to crash through the roadblock by the bridge, which means you've really got to have your toe in. And I have no idea who's in this, I'll be perfectly honest, but I tell you what, they're not hanging about by any state of the imagination. There's no little ramp getting up one side of the car. This is pure bang, look at that, just crashes straight into the bottom of it and into the top of it. That's a hell of an impact. This major sequence here, we are now in the territory for Buddy Joe Hooker, who was doubling Sylvester Stallone. He talks about the swabs that are going off. You look into those, look into the direction of that when it goes off, and it will get you. He now has to decide, there's the character deciding, right, I've got to jump to that tree. 90 feet. He's going to jump, and he goes. That's Buddy Joe Hooker at the top part of the fall. And captured from a couple of angles, landing in an airbag, then landing through the tree, and then Sylvester Stallone does part of this as well. Physically falling through the tree, climb up the tree, fall through the tree. And they both injured themselves. Stallone broke a rib in this particular sequence. It's a very impressive sequence. And now, of course, there's a separate high fall. This guy is still out on the skid trying to shoot. He is doubled by Bobby Sargent, who has a high fall background. And he does a remarkable fall here. It's very, very careful because it's a helicopter. There's massive amounts of downdraft. And you've just got to be able to nail it. It's lovely. Absolutely lovely. So very impressive, very important. There are these extraordinary moments in the picture captured by a fledgling team. Palmisano's got some great experience. Conrad Palmisano, the stunt coordinator. There's Diamond Farnsworth. And all of these jumps, these were filmed earlier on in the sequence before Benny Dobbins had his accident. But it's one of those movies that just stands out. You can watch it. You can go back to it time and time again. There's the airbags put in the appropriate places. Big airbags too, but they need to be. And some wonderful action, wonderfully put together. And it's a great start to that series of films. So there you go. That's it for this week. That is First Blood. Benny Dobbins, you will be familiar with, of course. We have spoken about him before, and of course was a huge mentor to another powerfully built individual by the name of Arnold Schwarzenegger, who of course went on to bigger and better things himself. But Benny was the guy who said to him, you can do some of this. If there's a new breed of action hero, then you can do it. The audience is there for you. It's something that they will want to associate the character with, and to see you doing a great deal of the action is something that they want to do. So he was very, very important in the creation of Arnold's characters along the way. Sadly passing away on the set of Red Heat. Had a heart attack and died, bless him. They were doing the wrestling sequence at the start of the picture, if you remember that. And so it's always nice to remember some of the good things and the great moments in Benny Dobbins' career. Broke his back on First Blood, of course. Not the highlight, I would say, of his career. However, got a lot of mileage out of it, and it's an extraordinary thing to talk about. But anyway, that's First Blood. 40 years. Did you see it at the cinema in 82? If so, add it to the comments below. And next week we will do more of the same. I dare say we'll go back to television next week. We sort of diverted momentarily on the basis that this was a a landmark moment. So normal service will resume next week. Until then, I will bid you a fond goodbye.